Hello, on behalf of the Reviews magazine at the Department of English and American Studies at the Faculty of Arts of Masaryk University, I would like to invite you to our interview with His Excellency Andrew Schapiro, the Ambassador of the United States of America to the Czech Republic.
So first of all, Your Excellency, I would like to thank you very much for your time. We're really happy we can make this interview happen.
Thanks, I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So my first question, since you were appointed to the Czech Republic, you actually work at a place that issued documents which saved your mother's life. Then there is the picture of St. Nicholas Church that your grandmother painted in 1925, and it's one of the things she took with her when fleeing from Czechoslovakia in 1939. Mm-hmm. And this picture is now hanged on the wall in your office. It seems to me a bit like turning a full circle. So I would like to ask you, how did your family react when you told them you were being appointed to the Czech Republic? And if it somehow felt like coming back to your roots?
It really has. I don't think you could write a story like this and have people believe it. And unfortunately, my mom is no longer alive, so she didn't get to see this, but all my cousins, my sister, my uncle, he was born here also as a little boy. It was very hard for people to believe. But I will say, I did not discover all of the connections until I got here. So I knew, of course, my mother's story of coming from here, but some of the documents I only found when I arrived here because I brought lots of things with me that we had had in boxes in our house and never looked at. So every day there's even been some new discovery. It certainly makes the whole time here more meaningful.
Thank you. There is also the history of Czech community in Chicago where you were born in. Was it somehow noticeable during your childhood or formative years? Would you say you've been better prepared for your ambassadorial role here, thanks to being half Czech and thanks to growing up in an area where there's Czech tradition? Did your perception of the Czech Republic change after you assumed your role in the embassy?
It's true in Chicago. There are many Czechs. We have a neighborhood called Pilsen. We have a street called Cermak or Cermak Road, named after one of our mayors who came from Czechoslovakia, actually from Bohemia. The statues of Masaryk. But in many ways, my mother's family, my mother was like a lot of American immigrants. She wanted to be American. She came as a little girl. She didn't want to have an accent. When she was little, she didn't want her parents to speak a foreign language when they were walking on the street. Later in life, she said she felt bad about that she wished she had embraced more of those things. So there was a way in which I felt the community, definitely, and my family had other immigrant friends. But there was also a way in which my mom made very clear, she wanted to be American. I think that's kind of typical.
You are the 9th US ambassador that resides in Prague since the Velvet Revolution, and you seem to be very prolific in your activities. Some of your predecessors had topics on their agenda they were especially passionate about. For John Shattuck, it was human rights. For William J. Cabanis, it was trade partnership between our two countries. So I would like to ask you if you also have one or two topics on your agenda you would like to focus on.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of them, and it's the reason I'm here today, is I would very much like to connect with your generation, the people who were born after 1989 and might not remember how things were, and for that reason might not value the transatlantic relationship as much as their parents do. It's very important to me to make sure that the special relationship we have continues into the next generation. And then the other piece of that is I would like, if I can, to encourage Czechs as individuals and the whole Czech Republic to continue to be engaged in the world as much as possible. So contributing, as you are, to peacekeeping missions, advocating for democracy and human rights around the world, which you have always done. That's such an important tradition, and it means a lot to me, and so I hope that the country will continue to do that. rather than turning inward.
You regularly participate in events that are important for Czech history. Obviously, you're expected to be seen at some of these events, but you seem to be going beyond the call of duty. For example, when showing your support for Short Trousers for Václav Havel initiative, I saw pictures on your Facebook account. So I would like to ask you what these events and initiatives mean for you personally, and what significance you see in them in terms of Czech-American relations.
It's very important. We have so many historical ties, whether it's liberation events relating to the end of World War II in Pilsen and other parts of the western parts of the country. I love attending those, whether it's any commemorations of Havel and the Velvet Revolution, trying to remember the statue of Jan Palach.
Yeah, you recently visited the unveiling of his memorial.
It was a Jan Palach memorial. I was a student of history. That's what I studied at college before law. And I think it's only by remembering and valuing these sacrifices that happened before us that we can really value what we have today. And it's important to remember things can change fast. But one more thing, which is I love getting out and just seeing people out, not just in Prague, but in other parts of the country, and these are always an opportunity for that.
Which relates to my next question. The embassy puts emphasis on its approachability and actively promotes American culture as well. Also, social media are important for communicating with public, both for you personally as well as for the office. So how do Czechs respond to all this? Has this attitude changed the way the USA, the US Embassy, or people working there are perceived by Czechs?
Well, you might be in a better position to answer that question than I would about how we're perceived by Czechs, but you're definitely right that in today's world, you can't just rely on a press release or sitting inside your walls. You need to be active to be engaged. So whether it's Facebook or Twitter or just having lots of programs that people can attend, I've asked everyone at the embassy to really think of creative ways that we can be out, that we can be approachable, that we can show ourselves as the normal people that we are. Maybe that's part of the American brand, right? This idea of trying to be open, try to be friendly, try to have fun. There's nothing wrong with fun. And I hope that we are making those connections.
Yeah, I think so. Well, the embassy is not only active in cultural events, but also in visiting Czech educational institutions. But you personally visited 6 universities only between November 19th and December 4th, 2015. Your Counselor for Public Affairs, Mr. Ray Castillo, he visited also high schools and even elementary schools. Mm-hmm. So how do you find interaction with Czech students, and possibly what goals are you hoping to meet when visiting Czech schools?
Last year, it wasn't just me and it wasn't just Ray Castillo. We had many people from our embassy going down to even some of the most junior officers, going out. They might talk to a high school or a small school or a club or a group, because that really is a way to make connections, but it's also a way for us to learn, because people sometimes forget that one of the jobs of an embassy, it's not just to talk to people, but it's to listen. And I found that for all of us, when we go out, and if I speak to students at a university, I even want to speak to some students in high schools, because they have a lot of ideas and energy too. We come back and we've learned things. What do you care about? What do you worry about? What don't you like about the United States? That's important for me to know, and I'm not afraid to hear that. I want to hear people say, oh, we're worried about gun violence, or you're trying to be the policeman of the world. I want to have those conversations with people. And so it's talking, but it's listening just as much.
I'd like to go back a bit to cultural ties, because there has been an ongoing notion that the relations and understanding between the United States and the Czech Republic and also earlier with Czechoslovakia during the First Republic era, are built somewhat naturally on shared notion of democracy and democratic principles. Do you feel that the current relationship between our two nations has a basis more in ongoing cultural ties and personal friendships related to names like Václav Havel, Madeleine Albright, or Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk, who provided a sort of bridge between our two countries, rather than an actual political partnership of strategic importance?
You didn't mention Jaromír Jágr. Yeah, so we have those connections too. I don't think it's either or. We have both. We have not just the cultural connections, but I think Americans and people all over the world, if you talk to them about the Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia, they think about culture, high culture. They think about literature, music. It's part of your brand. I was talking about ours, but part of your brand. But the other part of your brand is this Havel idea of co-responsibility. I mean, I even used a quote from Havel today in my speech to the law faculty about how one person's suffering has to be seen as everybody's suffering. Of course, not everyone walks around every day thinking about Havel's ideas. You have a normal life. But I think and I hope that people here still realize sort of the valuable legacy you have, the inheritance you have, and the respect that gives this country in the world. So it's both.
What do you think were the crucial milestones in Czech-American relations? And also, was there any moment during your time at the embassy when you felt especially strong support of the Czech Republic to United States, or vice versa?
So strong moments, there have been highs and lows. The founding of Czechoslovakia, obviously the United States, Woodrow Wilson gave lots of support. That was a high. That was a special time. And this country, Czechoslovakia, was really one of the most successful countries in Europe between the war, and we had lots of ties. But 1938 is a low. I think the whole Western world still needs to feel some shame and sorrow about the fact that we didn't or couldn't do anything to help this country stand up against the Nazis. 1945, great. We helped liberate the west of the country, but there was also a low there. There were political decisions, negotiations between the great powers, and General Patton stopped in Pilsen and didn't go further. History might have been different if he had. 1948, don't know if there's much we could do. 1968, maybe a low, not a milestone. And yet, during all those years afterwards, our embassy maintained a real dialogue with and a connection to people who valued freedom, not just the famous dissidents, but also more ordinary people. And someone who worked at our embassy during those times, the 1980s, recently said to me that she remembers people from some other European embassy saying to her, "Why do you Americans spend all the time with these dissidents? You're just going to irritate the government." And she said, "Well, because it's the right thing to do." And then they woke up one day, and these dissidents were the government. They were in charge. So that's a high. Obviously, the Velvet Revolution, the whole period of the 90s. A high, and then we've had our little ups and downs over the times, but it has always been a strong, solid relationship, and I'm sure that it always will be. The second part of your question, I know I've given a long answer here, but the second part of your question was, have there been some specific times during my time here when I've seen the highs and the lows? I haven't really seen low. I mean, there are always internet trolls. If you talk about times where I feel people don't like the United States, never read the comments, on Twitter, Facebook, because they're crazy, although sometimes they make a mistake and they jump into the Russian alphabet. That has happened sometimes. They've used Cyrillic script. But a real high was this dragoon ride convoy. I don't know if you remember last year, there was a plan to move a large number of American troops who were coming back from their exercises in the Baltics through Poland and through the Baltics to join up in the Czech Republic and go back to their base in Germany. And in the weeks leading up to this convoy, many people in the press or on the internet were saying, oh, you know, there'll be protests, people will throw tomatoes at the Americans, they don't want them here. And when the actual day came, you had thousands of people waiting in the rain, in the cold, to cheer for the troops, waving flags to greet them. And for me, that was just a marvelous moment, because we were a little nervous. Well, what's going to happen? And you can see that there was lots of support. And I don't think so many people would have come out if there had not been all this speculation and worry and opposition. I'll always remember that.
Thank you. Well, you were appointed in during the second Obama administration. Do you think that the relationship with the Czech Republic somehow changed during the two administrations? And also with the upcoming presidential elections, do you think that the Czech-American relationship might change possibly in future? I know it's hard to predict, but...
Sure. I don't think there's been any big change between the two Obama administrations. It'd be hard to figure out also because, of course, there was also a change of the government here. So trying to decide, you know, what minor changes there have been. Our relationship is very strong, and, you know, I noticed this especially in November of 2014, when almost the whole Czech government went to Washington for the unveiling of this bust of Havel in the United States Capitol. And there are only, I think, 2 or 3 other non-Americans who have statues there. 4 maybe total. There's Winston Churchill, a few others, and now Havel. The chemistry was magnificent, and I think for everyone who was in that hall when they were playing the national anthem of the United States and the national anthem of your country, many people, including me, were almost crying. It was a special feeling. So there's a real connection on the political level in this administration. It's impossible to predict what will happen in the next administration, but I can't imagine any reason why the relationship would not continue as strongly and solidly, regardless of which man or woman wins the next election.
And our last question, to finish on a less serious note. How do you actually enjoy studying Czech?
Není lehký. Potřebuju studovat, ale nemám moc času. And now I'm learning, you know, dělat and udělat and psát and napsat. Proč?
I'm sort of asking the same question myself.
Yeah, I think because you don't have these verb tenses like ing or at, I don't know. Ale, to je zabavný. Líbí se mi. Češtinu?
Sorry?
Líbí se mi. Češtinu, Czech? Čeština. Even if it's a little bit difficult. And I'm going to keep trying until my very last day here. No matter if I'm here another, year or 2 or however many it is, it's important to try. To je důležité. Zkusím? Snažit se, to try. I thought, isn't zkusím try?
It can be both.
Okay, snažit se. Anyway.
I'm really glad to hear, so and good luck with that.
Yeah, it's, I enjoy it. So.
Thank you very much, sir, for your time. It's been an honor.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it myself.